think we probably have everybody that we need. And we'll go ahead and open the Administrative Practices Committee. It is now 9:02 on May the 5th, Tuesday. We will be presenting.
There she is.
There you are.
Okay.
I got to turn that light on.
Presenting this meeting via teleconference, Zoom, and if you need to join the meeting, you can log on via our webpage. I believe it's located there with all the pertinent information.
Yeah.
Looks like we'll be public comment will be called throughout the meeting, and if you would like to provide public comment when prompted, press *9 to raise your hand, and then *9 again, and that will lower your hand. Okay. Well, we'll open it up to public comment on items not on the agenda. Seeing none. Give it one more second. We'll move on. Okay, we'll close public comment. Item number 1, approve the meeting minutes from the March 3rd, 2020 meeting. Directors?
I looked through them. I think they're fine.
I do too.
No.
Wonderful. Okay.
Well, there she is. Oh,
We there?
Ricky,
We got 2.
briefly.
Okay. We've got 2 approvals. We'll move on. Close item 1. Item number 2, approve the minutes from March 16th, 2020.
I don't have a problem. I think they're fine. I approve.
Chris?
And I do too.
All right.
Yes.
Great. Okay, we'll close item number 2. Item 3, the revision to district rules and regs. Item number 3.
And that is
Doug.
done.
Yep, so everybody can hear me?
Yep.
Awesome, so we're here this morning to review and discuss the proposed changes. Oh, sorry, wrong staff report, that's item 5. So we're here to talk about section 14 of the rules and regs, which is the physical encroachment to district facilities. And I'm gonna hand that off to Tanya Herrera, who's the senior engineer and who's the supervisor in charge of the encroachment department. So,
Okay, so good morning, everybody. We worked together with Recreation as well as the enforcement staff to do some revisions to section 14. And really the main goal was to encompass all district and facilities, including the reservoirs, as well as clean up some of the language to add some clarity and also move some stuff to our standard details. So at this point, we would like to walk you through the revisions to this section. And if you have any questions as we walk through, please feel free to interject. And I'm actually going to have Mary Ann Bailey walk us through the revisions, and we'll go from there. Mary Ann?
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know how much we want to go over supplemental definitions unless you guys have questions. More of it was just updating some of the language within it and then including docks and reservoirs. But for the most part, it remained as it was when we revised it back in 2017.
This is Ricky. I did wonder if we needed to add in the supplemental definitions what the, we've got district in there capitalized. And so when we say approval of the district, what does that actually mean? Does that mean the board of directors? Does it mean the APC? Does it mean the general manager? It is a number of times it's referred to in here as approval of the district. And do we need a definition, I guess is my question.
Okay.
We need a definition of the district agents. Is that what you're looking for? Because I think I'm not well versed in the beginning of the sections. I know that we have.
I think what
Okay, well-
Ricky's asking for is a
So-
clarification of what district means within section 14.
Right, that's right. So as an example, review of encroachment application, the district shall review the encroachment application. So who is the district who reviews that? Is that staff? Is it GM? Is it board? Is it APC? You know, like who is the reviewer?
Yeah.
It's just not clear because then at different times it talks about the district at different levels of approval. And so I just felt like there should be some information about that.
Yes, the district is the staff. Staff received the application. Staff is the one that moves forward and approves it. RAM, the general manager, is the one that ultimately signs the encroachment when it's ready to be signed and then recorded with the property.
Okay, so I'm just suggesting that in the definitions, you define what the district is
Okay.
in terms of approvals.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah,
Or
that's fine.
do you think it's, okay,
We can do that.
okay. So, sorry. Okay, continue, please. I have a lot of questions, so I'll just kind of ask them as we go through.
Okay. So if we're moving on then to 14-105 would be the unauthorized encroachment. We just updated the language within it. With encroachment authorization, just took out, so we've changed encroachment construction authorization application form to just the encroachment application, because it can be quite confusing how it was previously labeled. And then for the review of the encroachment application, we took out some of the language that was confusing to begin with, and just revised it so that it also shows that we may deny a permit, just so it's clear to everyone. Issuance of an encroachment permit.
Okay, wait, going back, sorry. At the review of the encroachment application, Rem, I was going to say in the second sentence where it says the district, comma, in its discretion, I was going to add the word sole, S-O-L-E. And then at the bottom, or after the last sentence, what I was wondering is if we don't need to update this with regard to why we might deny an application. And one of the things that occurred to me would be in this age of fire and emergency access needs. So what I was going to suggest is that we add after its responsibilities, comma, its easement rights, or that which may be determined by the district to be unreasonable in the age of fire and emergency access. So I want to give us a reason to deny other than just we're denying. It's like it may interfere with fire and emergency access issues. Or do we need that?
I would take the fire part out as it is an emergency and just layer it in as emergency access.
Okay, well,
That
that's
is
fine.
That's a broad enough.
Okay.
Broad enough.
Okay. I just wanted to have us have, an updated way of turning them down.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So how are we going to word that then? What's the? Can we
send you guys? I've got this all typed out. I can send it to whomever, to you, Doug, or to you, Rem, or whatever, and or you guys can just
Well, we can capture it off of the meeting as well. So we can do all.
That might be more work to capture it off the meeting. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay, whoever has a window open and has a bird outside.
Singing, yeah.
It sounds so spring-like.
Sorry.
Marianne.
That's awesome.
All right.
Is that better now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
much
Perfect.
better.
Chris,
Thank you.
work.
Okay, so moving on to section 14-203, issuance of an encroachment permit. All we did in that was update the language. We didn't really change anything from before other than capitalizing encroachment permit as it's an actual form.
Okay, so now I have a question about this. Are these recorded?
They are.
Yes.
Okay. And then can they be extinguished by transfer or sale, or do they just run with the land forever? And do we
They stay-
want them to run with the land forever?
They stay with the parcel, and that's how we want it to remain.
That is, okay.
Yes.
So I guess I was just wondering if there's ever a reason that we want a second look at it when someone, ownership changes.
Well, we always
And
have
if
the
we-
opportunity to do that, right? As
We
an
do?
encroachment
Okay.
permit, that if it becomes an issue for us, either an impact to our ability to deliver water or to be able to utilize the full access of the easements, we can always come back and have that
Okay.
discussion. Yeah.
Okay, great. But I just want to make sure it was recorded. Thank you.
Okay, and then section 14204, construction work. We just detailed a little bit more of when construction work can be performed after authorization from the district, and then just changed a little bit of the way it was written with the permittee, as that's now a person instead of just being, in there as plain, just like with district. Okay, and then 14205, water outage necessary for construction. We added in reservoir there as well, and then detailed it a little bit more so property owners or contractors are aware that, it could require a 14-day notice, and they needed to submit it in writing. And that way we can get the outage request for them.
That makes sense.
Maintenance of encroachment, 14206. We just put in more clarification as to who is responsible for the maintenance of the encroachment, which is the permittee, and that does transfer. So if someone were to purchase it, it does transfer the property and they become the person responsible for it. District 14207, district repair or replacement of encroachment. This was previously in a different section, but it wasn't as clear. And as we've come across more and more of these, we wanted it to be its own item. So property owners are aware of when we would repair or replace an encroachment. So 14208, revocation. We wanted more clarity as to when we may, or the process of revoking that encroachment permit.
So in this section, we have in the third line an opportunity to be heard, meaning that the permittee may, want to appeal essentially. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't then insert opportunity to be heard by the board of directors or by a committee of the board of directors or something, so that they have a method to appeal this to, quote unquote, a sort of a higher authority. Because if the GM says no, and somebody says, well, I really need it, I want to talk to somebody else, then the next step would be the board. It seems important to have a process in there. What do you think,
So,
Tim? And Chris?
like the planning commission, like you would do in the planning commission with the board of supervisors.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
if you want to be heard, then the full board needs to take up the
Okay.
hearing for reconsideration, right? Because you're yeah, I think the authority lies there. Okay,
I think so. So I think it should be included.
Would you want to go to a committee first for a recommendation, or you just want to go from, if the GM upholds the revocation, then it would just go to a full board?
Well, I think it's got to go to the full board, right? Because the committee is, well, I guess, the committee's going to make a recommendation based off. I need some time to think about that, but I think that there needs to be a process. So when you get
I think.
office, if you want rehearing, then you can, we'll build a path to the board to make final decisions.
I think that's important to have that in there. Okay, thank you.
And I agree with that.
Okay.
Okay, then 1403, unauthorized encroachments. 14301, notification and penalty for district removal or replacement. It's just clarifying for property owners what we may do if it's an unauthorized encroachment and how we would go about either removing it or replacing it.
Okay, so sorry everyone, but so my comment about this is, first of all, Rem, do we have lien rights so that if a property owner, yes, we do?
We do.
Okay, should we put that in there that after X number of days, the district has the right to lien the property for its reasonable cost to include legal fees or something? So that they're put on notice that this will be a lien on their property, because nowhere in here does it really talk about that.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
So we can add that at the end of after 30 days, where we say they have to pay it within 30 days. If not, the district can shall lien the property or something to that effect.
Yeah, it just needs to be in there. If we have lien rights and we might do it, then we need to let folks know.
Yes.
We do often work with property owners for payment plans too.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
we do often work with property owners for payment plans on these. So we would, having a certain number of days before we go to a lien. Marianne, do we have a normal amount of days before we do that? Or is it kind of case by case depending on whether or not the property owner is making efforts for a payment?
So what's happened in the past is we would bill them, or customer service would bill them. And if it remained unpaid, when we transferred all other unpaid bills to property taxes, that would transfer with it. So it's, I think, in May.
It happens only annually, right? Exactly, Marianne. Totally correct.
I see.
So we do our May lien, it'll get captured in the lien block.
Okay. That's fine, but we need to tell them that it'll be liened.
Absolutely. I think it's great.
Okay.
I think, the more disclosure that Marianne has in the field, the better, right? So she can say pursuant to 140301, just be aware that you have 30 days to pay. If you do not pay within 30 days, or we'll remand that to customer service, at which point you will have the opportunity to make a payment plan. Should you choose not to, please understand that you will be liened as directed pursuant to the policy. Yeah, it's much cleaner. I agree.
Okay.
And then 14302, immediate threat to district facilities, reservoirs, or rights of way. We removed conditions for district replacement and included it within 14302 as well. And we're just outlining what we would consider an immediate threat and how we would remove that threat from a district facility or right of way. And then 14 for reservoirs. We took this from the previous, I think, docs as well. Did we, Tanya?
Yes.
Okay. And instead of just having it as docs, now that we're including reservoirs, which the docs would be included with, so we now have it 1404 reservoirs, 14401 supplement to general encroachment regulations. It's just adding in reservoirs to our previous encroachments. 14402 is the scope as far as anything being done within a reservoir, construction, operation, maintenance, just so everyone's aware.
So I had a question about that. And my question was, it sounds like, no structure shall be permitted, so on and so on, included but not limited to gazebo, slides, decks, boathouses. And I was wondering if we needed to add something like those fire pits or fire poles and expressly prohibit any fires. I'm thinking about people putting fire pits out docks. And is that, do we need to, first of all, A, do we agree that that's a thing? And B, is this the right place to prohibit it?
Monica might be able to better answer that one.
Chris, do you have a thought?
If we do that, one, it'll be consistent, it would be consistent with our no fun policy, right? No campfires on district property,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you could add it, you would add it in here as, well, you'd have the no fun policy that you're not allowed to have campfires on district property, but then you'd also want to preclude them from putting, the permanent, there's a permanence to certain types of campfire ring, right? I mean, if they're just rocks in a circle, then we're gonna lay back onto the no fun policy. If if it's a concreted in block,
Fire pit, right.
steel ringed super monster, then yeah, no, you can't do that.
Could be a bike track, it could be there's all sorts of different permanency.
And you can buy the little portable ones from Costco and you got a propane tank underneath them, you know, and they get out of the water and they're cold and they start up the fire. I mean, I'm just wondering.
I don't think that that's out of bounds. I think that.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, we could add some language.
What were you gonna say, Chris?
Yeah, so I was gonna say, mostly Ricky's not out of bounds. She asked all my questions. Keep going.
So no structure shall be permitted or affixed or temporarily placed upon the encroachment, including but not limited to. And I think you really should put fire rings on that, because that speaks, right? Because it's from a gazebo all the way down to a fire ring.
Right. Right.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris,
Yes.
for your kind words. Okay.
Well, no, it's these things are to park boats, not to recreate on, right? I mean, not to have other additional recreation.
Yeah.
Right.
We just don't want anybody putting anything in our easement as it relates to the reservoir, because as we raise and lower the reservoir, it will impact their stuff, as well as it will impact the operations of the reservoir itself.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Good.
We want to help Greg out when the claims come.
Yes. We'll have a policy to.
In the middle of the lake. Okay.
Okay. 14403. Projection of adjoining parcel defined. It's just putting in there what we consider an adjoining parcel. So that way everyone's aware that, okay, even if you're a few parcels over, that is not considered adjoining.
So why is this an issue, Marianne?
Because we do have property owners that they do not abut or adjoin district property, but yet they want to put a dock for their use, which would require them to then go through someone else's parcel.
And this does, it's a big problem that I've had over the last couple years with property owners being 2 parcels away, thinking that they have access to the lake because they can get there and they can just install their own dock.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And so the idea, right, is that
There we go.
the property owner that's adjoining our property would be the permittee, even if they have some side agreement with somebody being able to access their property. The permit and the dock would be with the permittee, would be with the property owner that is adjacent, and not with a property owner that has an easement through somebody else's property.
Exactly.
The only way you can get down to the lake is either have a flag lot to the lake or be an adjoining parcel to the lake.
Right.
Right.
You can't have an easement to the lake?
There are easements to the lake, but those are private.
Right, but that doesn't give you access to the dock.
Correct.
Putting a dock on the lake.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
And then the second part of,
Monica, does that work for you?
Yes, because that's one of the things that I've had issues with is that, well, I have an easement. I paid for this easement to be able to walk down this little path to get to the lake. That means I should be able to have a dock. And it's like, no, that your easement with so-and-so has nothing to do with NID.
Okay.
and then the second part of that last sentence, it talks about, where we have pie-shaped properties, so they're very small and narrow. They may only have a few feet of frontage along our property. So it's just, we'll try to accommodate as best that we can that makes sense, but I mean, there's just some properties that are gonna have a difficult time being able to install a dock when they've only got 4 or 5 foot of frontage because of it's a pie shape or something.
Okay. All right.
Okay, then 14404, requirements for dock location, design, and installation. It's just detailing, and we changed a little bit as far as why docks will be permitted and where.
Okay.
And then 14405, application for encroachment on district reservoir. This is just implementing the same process that we do for any other encroachment application. So that way everyone's aware this is what you need to, the process that you need to go through. And it's just mirroring what we do for canals and rights of way and easements elsewhere. 14406, insurance. This is detailing the property owner's responsibility to carry insurance that covers whatever their encroachment permit allows on district property or facility.
Okay, and this is Ricky again. I always feel like this insurance thing is too light, and that especially with a dock where you got people doing foolish things, jumping off and whatever, that we should require a minimum of $1 million for each one of those things. And it doesn't cost the homeowner that much more, but it would really protect the district, I think, if it we up that insurance requirement. What do you think, Chris? And then I have another question about insurance. In my world, we get those accords or the evidence of insurance up front, but those expire every 12 months. And do we have a process for tracking this? Because somebody could get $1 million insurance policy and then just let it expire and know if there's no one there to police it. How do we make sure that they continue to stay insured?
Well, it should get caught because there's an annual fee for a dock permit. So
yeah, so with the dock permit, you'll show your proof of insurance.
And,
okay, so we have a method. Okay.
Yeah, Recreation goes through them every year. We go through them several times a year, and we send letters for those that we don't have copies of. Most of them have it set up where the copy comes directly to us. And then when property sells is when we might have an issue, and then we just deal with the new owner and fix it.
Okay. Chris, are you up? Are you okay with $1 million as opposed to half?
I think he
Chris?
dropped off. I don't see him.
Let me stop my share and see.
Can't you scroll through the site?
I tried and
There he is.
he's muted.
You're on mute.
All right, Chris,
There
you're on
he
mute,
is.
bud.
He's muted. He's muted.
All right.
I'm trying to unmute him. Don't touch.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. I went into La La Land. I don't know how to get back on when we disappear.
So Chris,
There you are.
we're wondering if you're all right with the $1 million to the minimum for insurance requirements.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
If I could go back for a second, I tried to speak earlier, but was muted. If you don't mind.
Fire away.
Back to 4.04, the dock. I was initially confused about how big the dock would be, and then I found the attachment later on. If we could just put C attachment in there for the design, the size of the dock. Because my question
That's a good idea. Reference an exhibit.
Yes, reference exhibit. Yes.
Reference
all.
the
That's good.
district standard detail.
yeah, standard detail.
Yeah, that's a good
35.
idea.
Because then I did see where it says 2 boats, no more than two watercraft. So that was good. These things, how big is the dock? Okay, that's all I had. And then yes, I'm good on the insurance. You'll hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Then moving on to 14407 for fees. We just lightly touched on it, but Recreation has already established annual fees for docks, and they will continue to monitor and request those, just letting property owners know. 14408, water quality degradation. This is going over and informing property owners that they cannot drain into or cause water quality issues. And then 1405, we actually got rid of because that used to be docks. And now that we've included it within the reservoir section and the rest of encroachments.
Mhm.
Okay.
Then if you go to page 15, which is now 1405, campground rules and regulations, and just renumbered it to be included within section 14 now as well.
Mhm.
We did change two things on the back of that, right? Section 1405, 0108. We just added the word absolutely no fires.
Right.
Yes, good,
And then,
good.
I think it's one of the last pages here. Yeah, so, where to go?
Second one's on page 21.
21, 1405, 02, 08, fires
Yeah.
prohibited.
And then also, on the
It
fireworks.
should be in here.
I'm looking for the one that says fireworks. We cleaned that up a little bit too. See it in here now.
It should be no.
Well, on page 22, under prohibited activities, you have fireworks there, but it only looks like it applies to Jackson Meadows and Bowman.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we expanded it to all.
We expanded it to all because we assume that everything's off limits, not just those two locations.
Yeah, right. And then we don't allow firearms either, right? So we should explicitly say no firearms.
It's on, so page 18, firearms, no fireworks or firearms are permitted at any time. This includes BB guns,
okay.
airsoft guns, pellet guns, slingshots,
Yeah, I
paintball
saw
guns.
that. Well, so then is on page 22, prohibited activities, is that duplicative? And I'm a little confused. It seems like,
Yes,
oh,
that's,
this
that's
is
good.
high country. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it's.
Well, and so it's not, and not all the property in the upper division is ours. So we're extending the prohibited activities onto U.S. Forest Service lands that we're operating under contract. We don't
Okay.
necessarily have direct authority in those corridors.
Okay, so then do
We have prohibited activities.
Okay.
Other prohibited activities. Fire.
Fires prohibited.
Okay, we may need to rework how that all connects.
Yeah, it seemed a little disjointed to me.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We can do that. Go back over that. So my recommendation is that we take these edits back and we'll bring a more polished version to the APC and at the June meeting, and then we'll ask to move those to the full board.
Okay.
That seems fine.
All right?
One more
Okay.
question before that,
All right.
Rem.
Yeah.
Are there any changes or questions on the dock design? And we can bring that back at the same time if there are.
Okay.
CSD 35.
Chris, that would be your area. I only know about insurance and easements. Dock design is not my area.
Well, so Doug, is this standard in the industry? Is this an engineering standard?
Yeah, let me pull it up here. Hold on, I lost my. Where's it at?
Down.
Down.
Right, go up.
All right. So here we go. Where we at? Okay. So Sorry about that,
I
apologize.
looked it over and it seemed fine, but I
Yeah,
don't,
so,
this is
Okay,
not
me.
my area, you know, I don't have anything to say
Flying
about it.
through, sorry.
no, I think it's, I mean, the idea being is that, you know, we're trying to limit the size, obviously, so we put some limitations in terms of the size. How they're actually constructed will be something that the applicant will submit, right? They'll submit a plan and a drawing showing what they're gonna build it with, how they're gonna build that,
Mhm.
that we can take a look at and agree or disagree with that as it comes up. So this is really more meant to
That
be
makes sense.
some limitations in terms of, you know, you can only build it so big. You got to include the where the square foot, the boat slip is part of your overall square footage and that kind of stuff.
Okay, so essentially, all the design, all your standard is saying is these are the maximum limits of your design.
Exactly. And then when they submit it, then we'll approve it. And that says in note 1, right? The dock and the anchorage materials, that'll be approved by the district, and as well as the gangway and all that stuff.
Okay.
You have
Seems
Pam.
fine to me.
Okay, so we have some hands up and questions if we're open for public comment.
Sure.
Rick Berquist,
You're up.
Great. I just wanted to make one suggestion to clarify things on the underneath 14.04.04, which is requirements for the dock location. It talks about one parcel and one dock. There is language inside of, there has been Form 14D, which is the dock encroachment permit. And it has language that talks about you can't split a lot and get 2 docks out of it.
Oh,
Experienced
interesting.
homeowners, it's confusing because those rules are in 2 different places. My suggestion is you just move the wording for you can't split a dock from Form 14D and put it in the new 14.0.4, and then it's one place and it would be consistent.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Since,
okay. Thanks, Rick.
And then the other comment while I've got the microphone is,
Yeah.
I think we would just like to check out what the insurance rates are going from 500,000 to $1 million. Dealing with insurance companies lately has been very difficult for everyone, even getting insurance at times. So we just want to see the impact of that before we could comment fully.
Okay.
We're just coming back in June.
Yeah,
we'll
it's
be
coming back in June. I think it's important that we recognize that this, while not a terminal reservoir, this reservoir feeds 2 water treatment plants. So the impact, the potential damage or impact to operations is significant at Combe. So
No, we
want to make sure
understand
we
that. So
that is talking about the potential impacts for property.
So this might be a good time to talk about this. We don't specifically say in this section that it's Combe Reservoir. We just say reservoirs in general, but Combe is the only one that we currently even allow these kind of facilities. So do we want to put any kind of clarification in the document that says this is specific to Combe?
Doug, no, because we have the docks on Rollins. Remember that the Rollins Country Club has a small dock.
Okay. So we'll just be denying the application if somebody comes in for Scotts Flat or some other location. We'll just deny the app. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
and on that subject, is that policy for the other reservoirs? What's their, so I know we don't allow, is that policy somewhere else for the other reservoirs? That's a question.
It's district-wide, I think at this point, Chris, we haven't allowed others to put docks on to our other lakes. I mean, the one on Rollins, that was a significant legal battle.
I'm familiar with that one. I meant in general for the other reservoirs.
In general, we don't allow.
Like
we don't
Scott's?
Yeah.
They don't have any spots.
But I meant, my question was, is that Is that written policy? Because we own the property around Scotts Flat and Rollins. How about in the upper division?
Forest Service.
It's us and the Forest Service.
NID
What's
and
that?
Forest Service is up in the Bowman and the Jackson Meadows area.
So unless
So
the
those
Forest Service wants a boat dock,
Okay,
but we have boat ramps, so we're.
Yeah, there's ramps.
right.
Yeah, I think that Combi's the only one that we own that has a residential population around it necessarily.
Right.
I mean, Scotts
Well,
Flat has,
Scott's does, yeah.
that has Cascade Shores, but they have a boat ramp already, and they have NID docks available and buoys, so it doesn't really, it's not the same. I think the thing about Combi is it doesn't necessarily have easy public access, and so the homeowners really are the only way to get onto the lake. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public? Sorry.
That's okay, you're good.
I wasn't
Okay.
public.
So we don't see any other hands raised. We'll bring this item back in the June APC meeting. Rick, please bring your comments back on that meeting as well. And we'll go ahead and close this item.
Can we also, hold on, Greg, can we also get a copy of Ricky's comments? Can you send those either to me or to
Yeah.
Ram so we can go through those as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes, I will.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Ricky.
Great. Okay, so with that, we'll close item number 3 and we'll open item number 4. Speaking of insurance, Ricky, your favorite topic.
Well,
I'm sure
you
she
know.
has questions.
Well, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, if you don't need it, it's fine, but when you need it, you really need it, so.
Yeah. Well, we'll
Yeah.
dive into this. We have a consultant on the line, Alan Tyler of Gallagher Insurance and Brokerage Services. I will open up with an introduction to the item and take about 4 or 5 minutes here, and then I'm going to pass the microphone. Alan.
Don't share. Just leave it. Yeah.
Alan has a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation that he'll run through, and we can either ask questions along the way or run through it all. We'll see how it goes. So if something pops up in your mind, please feel free to jump in. Okay, so today the members of the committee will receive an overview of alternative insurance packages for workers' compensation and property liability coverage apart from the Special District Risk Management Authority, inclusive of preliminary findings, recommendations, and preliminary package costs. Members and the public will also hear information of the broker's capabilities, expertise, and services in this area. Given the condensed timeline that we've had to operate in to evaluate NID's total insurance package and coupled with a worldwide pandemic at the same time, we are still awaiting insurance quotes and some cost assessments on various leading carriers. At this point, we have some costs and anticipate a special APC meeting before the end of May, prior to the May 27th board meeting, for a full review of cost to the APC. In 2005, NID entered a workers' compensation insurance program with SDRMA. In 2008, we entered into our property liability insurance program with SDRMA as well. Since then, NID has remained with our insurance package, both property liability and workers' comp, through SDRMA. A difficult business decision was made recently by SDRMA to exclude overhead transmission and/or feeder electrical lines from all their policies. NID, as you know, owns and operates approximately 12 miles of above-ground electrical lines with an additional 1.7 miles to be acquired through the Deer Creek Powerhouse system. On February 24th, we received a call from SDRMA explaining that beginning July 1 program year, SDRMA will no longer provide insurance coverage for these overhead electrical power lines and the electrical feeder lines. These lines under NID's ownership range from 480 volts to 115 kilovolts and connect NID's hydroelectric powerhouses with regional distribution electrical systems, including PG&E. The above ground lines are critical to NID's delivery of clean, renewable power from this generation source. Notice of this decision precipitated our investigation of alternative insurance programs. On March 10th, we submitted a notice to withdraw from NID's insurance programs, which is consistent with their bylaws. On March 12th, we sent a request for qualifications to 3 recommended insurance brokerage firms. These firms were recommended to NID staff from conversations with various safety and risk managers from across different sister agencies, including Placer County Water Agency, Modesto Irrigation District, Merced Irrigation District, and the Northern California Power Agency. We sent this RFQ to Arthur J. Gallagher and Company, Aon, and Marsh Power Utility and Renewables Practice. On March 25th, we received 1 statement of qualification from Arthur J. Gallagher and Company. As part of the submission, Gallagher identified a team of experts focused on claims, loss control, financial analysis, and risk protection. Alan's presentation shortly will go through some of those. Gallagher's services include safety and risk program audits, modeling policies, and safety best practices throughout the district. A team of staff assessed Gallagher's description of services, background, experience, staffing, management, and proposed pricing and commission structure. Overall, the review team gave Gallagher a score of 91 out of 100 points possible. On April 6th, we entered into a non-disclosure agreement with Gallagher, and since then, we have been working seriously, and I want to thank Hydroelectric Department, Rec Department, Ops, Maintenance, and everybody for gathering as much information as we possibly can in safety, for presenting over, boy, at this point it's 4 gigs of information that we continually go forth, back and forth with Alan. Documents, files, data, information since early April, and we've conducted multiple phone conversations with staff as well as with Gallagher staff. In the staff report, you see a 5-year workers' compensation and property liability programs package costs. These are the percent increases over the last 5 years of our insurance package with SDRMA, inclusive both workers' comp and property liability. Years 2021 program year is estimated in this package, and you'll see a slightly revised estimation in the package that Alan is going to present to you here shortly on the PowerPoint. Again, we're just receiving information daily, updating daily, so this package was put together a week ago. We've got some new information. So there's a slight variation on this year's projected workers' comp and property liability by the tune of 1% off of what we projected just last week. Let's see, on March 17th, so part of this on March 17th, we received an estimated contribution letter from SDRMA explaining a 51% policy increase on top of our property and liability program. So we've included that into next year's projection. We are still waiting for the final invoice for next year. Starts in July 1, 2020. We've estimated in this package workers' compensation increase over 6%, and you'll see from Alan's review, he's added a few more items which explain some of the latest modifications that came from SDRMA's workers' compensation staff to help us further that costing. So with that, I'd like to introduce Alan Tyler. He is the Senior Director of Power and Utilities at Arthur J. Gallagher. Alan is based in Southern California, and he has clients and customers throughout the Northern California and is consistently in the area, so we have great access to him. He's been a fabulous help over the last month, working like a dog, trying to get us here, knowing that our timeline is extremely short for doing this type of work. Nonetheless, in a worldwide pandemic where there's remote working and a lot of folks trying to work from home. So with that, I'll introduce you to Alan, and take it away, Alan.
Thank you. I appreciate the chance to introduce myself and our company to you, and kind of give you my perspective on where you are and where we're going and options we expect to have soon. Chris, do you want to put the PowerPoint up?
I'm on it.
Okay. So, let me tell you a little bit about myself before we dive into the slide. I have worked with water agencies for most of my career. I began handling insurance for Imperial Irrigation District in 1986. So that's been 34 years of history and experience working with clients in your industry. And it's the highlight of my career. I love my job. I love this part of my job, and have enjoyed the opportunity to work with you. It seems like it's come to you kind of with a crisis perspective on it, with sudden changes from SDRMA, but I'd like to assure you that you have peer organizations that have been buying insurance for years. There are programs available, and with a broader perspective, I think you're going to be very well suited going forward. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? So let me tell you a little bit about Gallagher, and in particular, our work for public entities such as yourselves. Gallagher is the 4th largest insurance broker in the world. When you went to in the United States, when you issued your request for qualifications, you sent those to the number 1, number 2, and number 4 brokers in the country. Number 2 and number 3 are merging, so we will soon be the 3rd largest broker in the country. We are the largest broker for public entities, though, in the country. And you can see this is a year-old slide, but almost 14,000 clients, over $1 billion in annual premium, and this is a area of the economy that we're heavily involved. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? So I ran a report from one of our systems just looking at water agencies for which we do business just kind of on the West Coast. And you can see 468 clients, 3,400 policies, almost $35 million in premium, different insurance companies, different lines of business. I just thought this snapshot would, again, just help you see who's out there in the marketplace doing the work for you. And the insurance companies are used to seeing submissions from us, and we know how to talk to them, and they know how to talk to us about their concerns. So we're well on our way in productive work for you. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? So while you, of course, are primarily a water agency, have significant power operations with your hydro generation, I have a number of clients who are water agencies with power operations. At our last count, we insured something like 2,500 megawatts on about 40 different plants, from hydro units going all the way from Don Pedro to, under a megawatt, just run of the river, dams, and then the other whole side of energy practice, 30 megawatts of battery storage, several hundred megawatts of, combustion turbines. So the energy practice is a highly specialized part of the industry. It's heavily technically underwritten in terms of the exposures and the plant maintenance. And again, this is just when you come to a slide next showing who some of my clients are, you'll see that my team crosses the water and the power exposures frequently. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? So brief introduction to myself and my right-hand person, Daniel Lemus. So again, I entered the insurance business in 1980 after graduating from college. I've, again, worked for public entity water utility clients for many years, working in 1986. With a partner in Houston, we developed a couple of group programs for public power. At one point, a liability insurance program we developed insured 30 of the 50 members of the large public power council, you know, all the way from New York Power Authority and Santee Cooper and Washington State Utilities and all corners of the country, Texas. Daniel Lemus, who works for me, manages the commercial insurance operations of my office and also handles some of the day-to-day insurance matters on all of our water and power utility clients. He has tremendous experience in the industry. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? So a few other people on our team. John Muno is a Gallagher employee who focuses on risk services for our power generation clients. John began as a nuclear fire protection engineer for Georgia Power, and he has held a variety of risk engineering jobs in the industry. John is a phenomenal resource. He helps in claims advocacy. He succeeded in negotiating a favorable settlement to the tune of about $1 million greater settlement to one of our clients about 9 months ago in your neighborhood. And John has also actually done a little bit of consulting for your hydro staff already on a fire protection issue. Linda Pierce is an attorney who works for Gallagher, and her job is to advocate in claims, liability claims. So if there are complex issues where we need to work with the insurance company on coverage language or what happens, Linda is available to just help run special projects and, again, help support our claims resolution processes. Will Valdriz is a loss control consultant that focuses on employee safety and workers' compensation, and we've already made an opportunity to introduce Will to Don Bird and your safety, staff, and talk about what types of help they're going to want and need. So we're just kind of hitting the ground running. So these people are all, I'll just comment. It's we have 35,000 employees at Gallagher, and our competitors have, lots of employees, and it would be easy to put a menu of people together. And what's important to point out is that these are people who are actually, for instance, they know that they're on your team. They're not just in a brochure. They've already been talking with your staff and with me on what your needs are, and they will be actually involved in your program. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? So here's a splash page of some of my clients. Just go through this briefly. For TID, we handle everything related to property and casualty insurance, the machinery breakdown, liability, directors and officers. Similarly for Imperial Irrigation District and Modesto Irrigation District, and have for many, many years. For Glendale Water and Power, we place the property insurance program for their water and power utility of the city of Glendale down in LA. MSR is a joint venture of Modesto, Santa Clara, and Redding, and has a couple of power activities. Kings River Conservation District in Fresno operates the Pine Flat Dam and the power generation there. Tridam, I'm sure all familiar with, just south. Clark Public Utilities is a water and power utility in Washington State that we work with. And then Don Pedro, of course, is associated with Turlock and Modesto. So again, that's just a little background of my team, but other Gallagher clients include East Bay Mud, City and County of San Francisco, Santa Clara Water District. This is an area of the industry in which we're heavily involved. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? So I've touched on some of these points already, but just to briefly go through this, again, Gallagher is the 4th largest U.S. insurance broker. We have 35,000 employees. We are a public company traded on the New York Stock Exchange, but interestingly still managed by the Gallagher family. The Gallagher family members are significant stockholders in the company, even though we're a public company. So we have a great, unique culture, functioning very much like a private broker without as much direct reliance on Wall Street. One thing we're proud of is for 8 years in a row, we have been recognized by an organization called the Ethisphere Institute as one of the world's most ethical companies. They put us through a rigorous vetting process. It's a very select group. We're very proud of it, and we're the only insurance brokerage enjoying that distinction. We have a full-time ethics officer in the company who sits, his office is next to our chairman. He's immediately next to our chairman. It's a very important part of how we operate. And then finally, there's a paragraph that I touched on before mentioning the kind of the scope of our public sector practice. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? So, so that was a little bit about us. So kind of looking at NID and your challenges, here's some of my perspectives on kind of where you find yourselves just observing from the outside. You know, 12-year relationship with SDRMA on the property and the liability, 15 years on the workers' comp. Most of your staff really doesn't know anything else. I mean, you're deeply embedded in it. Your safety staff uses the Target Solutions program that SDRMA subscribes to deeply. And so that just means that there's a lot that we need to keep in mind if we're looking at options. We think your happiness with SDRMA is largely because we think you would be happy with a lot of quality insurance programs because your staff's capabilities are excellent. I've been working very closely with your safety staff, but especially with Greg and Kian, and I mean gigabytes of information, hundreds of files that you've provided, worksheets. I mean, I'm waiting for Kian to put my email address in spam just because I'm probably like his #1 correspondent these days, and Greg too, and I've enjoyed it. But you've put a lot of time into this, and so I guess where I'm trying to go is if you guys are executing well, that means things are going to go well wherever you are probably. And so I just think that you should give yourself credit for how well your insurance and risk management programs are going and not just with any one provider. A brief comment on SDRMA in that most public entity pools have an industry focus. So there may be a pool of school districts, you know, or a pool district of counties, because you have similar exposures. School districts have tremendous student accident and, let's say, abuse and molestation exposures, traumatic brain injury exposures with athletics. Cities and counties have tremendous land use and law enforcement exposures. So SDRMA is a really interesting organization in that they touch all industries. It's not good or bad, it's just something unique to just in terms of defining who they are. But I think it does inform why you had the bad news from SDRMA that they're no longer going to be providing liability coverage for any overhead wires, which unfortunately includes no wildfire coverage. You know, it's because assuming that's the most likely cause if you have a downed wire on a dry, windy day. And it I think it could be that it's not an exposure that crossed all their members. And so it just was a different business calculation if they only had 4 members with the exposure. Again, either good or bad, but it might inform, okay, why are we in the place we're in? And that's all. There are tremendous opportunity. There are plenty of options out there. Your peers have been buying insurance for years, and so it's just a matter of getting the right fit for you based on your unique exposures. So, and then also importantly, we don't want to just look for a lifeline. We're working on this as a positive development, and just to look for opportunities to improve coverage, try to keep budgetary impacts favorable. So we're working on this like we would work for any client's renewal programs and putting the best options together. It's just that we were starting from a dead stop. So been a lot of work to do. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? Okay, so just as I've been working with Greg and with Kian, we kind of put some priorities together. First of all, we have to keep an eye on the budgetary impact of the changes. We're hoping for a positive budgetary impact, but we're clearly working hard at that. Rather than look for one program that will handle all of your exposures, we have a few markets that maybe we'll combine, for instance, general liability and auto and some exposures. But in general, we are looking for an unbundled coverage structure. So we would go to a power generation specialist to write the machinery breakdown, transformer failure coverages for your hydroelectric generation property. Would go to a water utility specialist for your pollution and water distribution system liabilities. So we have dozens of submissions out in the market right now. We're looking for improvements in coverage. We get way into the weeds in definitions of different types of exposures and are working diligently at that. I heard someone earlier in the conversation say this is not about the policy, this is about the claim. And it's all about like what happens. To a great extent, our business is a promise and a stack of papers. And when something goes wrong, and then we get back into the office and you find the file and you hope it says what you want it to say, well, that work starts now. And so we are working very hard at making sure that each coverage term has the best available language. We do want to preserve the best of what you like. So one thing that's important to you with the program you've been with SDRMA is your relationship with a particular vendor of safety programs and a learning management system, Target Solutions. So I'm in contact with them to have a way available for you to continue using that if you choose to. Your safety department was, I'll just say, alarmed with the idea that they were going to have to figure out what to do with 12 years of training records and how to maintain that, track it, and be able to use it in the future. So we know it's a very important thing. And then the best of what you like in other ways. So for instance, your HR department is going to have certain ways that you want to monitor workers' compensation claims. How is that done? Is that done with a phone call quarterly? Is there a special reporting capability? So we're spending a lot of time on this area. We feel we have an excellent level of professional support available. I touched on 3 of the consultants that are already on your team, and that's important to us. And then we'll be looking for, it's last on the list, but it's valuable, other services available to meet your needs. So I'll give you 2 examples just that came up from watching this meeting. There are vendors available that do a very streamlined way of tracking insurance certificates. And so there are systems that can generate the renewal letter just because if there are June, insurance renewals, then letters to all of those permit holders might have gone out in April saying, hey, a reminder your insurance is renewing in June, just be sure to get us insurance. And then a May letter saying, hey, second reminder that your insurance is coming up, please get that to us. So that's an option. And then also, just in reviewing that document earlier today, you got into the discussions of the insurance. We get calls almost every day from clients on terms and conditions of contracts and agreements they have. So for instance, just yesterday, we worked with a client that's doing some helicopter-based LiDAR modeling of an aquifer, and a client whose security card company has, provided them with suggested insurance terms and conditions of their contract. It was very limiting, and so we're working with them on suggesting revisions. We do that all the time for a ton of clients. So that's something we work on, and we're proud of the support we can provide there. I don't know if I've been talking really fast and just crowding everyone out, but I haven't paused and asked if anyone has questions so far, but I'd be happy to take questions, or I can just keep going. Chris, can you advance the slide?
Well, I'm going to have some questions, but I'm happy to wait till your presentation is over. I'm writing them down.
Okay, great. Okay, so I listed some of my objectives, and now I want to just talk about the details a little bit on just some examples of what does that mean. So for your liability coverages, that's what kind of prompted the exercise as the news from SDRMA that you weren't going to have any liability coverage arising out of any overhead lines. But there are 3 programs that offer almost identical structures, and they compete aggressively. Picture a corner with 4 gas stations and a price war, and maybe price wars with gas stations is showing my age, but they compete really hard. All 3 of those are looking at your account, are very interested. So we think between those, we'll have some great programs emerging for general liability, auto, your directors and officers, cyber-related coverages. For your hydro machinery breakdown, again, major losses there be generators, transformers. There's a number of specialist engineering contractors who are entertain this business and are considering proposals. So we have options to package things, we have options to break things down, but currently we're out in the market pretty much a la carte, line by line. And again, we started from a dead stop about 5 weeks ago. Kian and Greg, I would say, especially because Greg has been kind of traffic copping all of my requests, have been giving me a tremendous amount of time. We had a tremendously busy spell for about 3 weeks while I was just learning a lot and gathering information. There was about 2 weeks of downtime as insurance companies were digesting, and now I've been giving Greg a raft of follow-up questions, and he's been incredibly responsive despite a lot of other responsibilities, and Kian also. I want to thank both of them. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? Okay. Again, this is we're receiving quotes in, but we're working very hard at making sure the budgetary impact of new options is as positive as it can be. We're working very hard on coverage terms, but also pressing on pricing and making keeping the competitive juices flowing with all the markets who are working on things. We have a few indications in, and some already with some possible coverage terms improvements, some pricing improvements. So far, things are coming in well. I have a spreadsheet at one of my last slides where I can show you some specifics. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? Again, I touched on preserving the best of what you like, and this will be the 2 points I have there have to do with the operations of your safety department. You've got your safety department is doing a phenomenal job tracking the information and providing a platform for the rest of the organization to work from. So that's something that's critical for you guys to maintain. So that deserves a point high on the list. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? Okay, again, I just touched on some of these topics already, but machinery breakdown on hydroelectric, on power plants is a highly engineered underwriting process. So, you know, insurance on a Camry is insurance on a Camry. You can call around and get a quote, but, you know, a hydro plant of a certain size with a certain transformer built in 1965 with certain dissolved gas analysis results on the GSU is different from the one at your own project up the way. And it's a very detailed, highly specialized underwriting process. And we've been working with engineers with, well, probably a dozen insurance companies evaluating your information. But as a service going forward also is we would expect to have engineering recommendations about, you know, how you might be doing inspections, how you might be documenting certain things. Another set of eyes, and the good news for Kian is highly knowledgeable eyes. You know, if you have an inspection of your power plant, there's not going to be somebody looking for extension cords. They're going to be talking about gas levels and transformers and, you know, vibration monitoring and how you manage through different situations. Again, just an example, John Muno, our power generation engineer, has already had an alternative at your, you're doing a new transformer at the Combi South plant, and there were some questions about the distance from the transformer to the Powerhouse building and what type of firewall would be required. And John got the oil volumes and natures, did a fire calculation of the strength of the concrete block firewall of the Powerhouse compared to the length of time that the oil would be expected to burn, and wrote up a report that your staff could use as a in their design basis. So that's the kind of thing that's just part of being a Gallagher client, is to have that kind of resource available. And again, Will Valdries has been introduced to your safety team. There's just been one call, but it was wanting to get a start, hit the ground running, depending on what workers' compensation programs emerge, what they offer. We'll just, again, be kind of giving your staff a menu and deciding on what the plan should be going forward. Chris, can you advance the slide? Thank you. Okay, so ancillary services, I've talked about a few things. We have an online training portal that's of no charge, and my idea is to let your staff see it and see what works for you. Does Target Solutions work best? Does this other portal address some of the needs? And just kind of keep an open decision on that. We'll just add to what you have available to you. We have a number of proprietary webinars and training topics on an ongoing basis. These can be safety related, cyber, public entity basis. We have a long subscription center. And then depending on the insurance company that comes to the table, there are, again, some tremendous insurance company resources. Allied Public Risk has a tremendous water utility program. They have a relationship with an organization called the American Water College that has a number of training resources at no charge to their clients. Aegis is an insurance company. Aegis is an acronym, stands for Associated Electric and Gas Insurance Services. It's a billion-dollar company, A-rated by all of the rating agencies, and it only has 250 clients. But those 250 clients happen to probably have a 95% market share of gas and electric utilities in the U.S. So they have tremendous training resources in power plant maintenance and line inspection, call center training, you name it. It's a great resource. And then I had one slide earlier just kind of showing our business in the public sector space, but we've got tremendous data analytics capabilities. I showed your staff in an early meeting risk modeling we can do. We can pick an address and model it with the CAL FIRE FRAP maps for severity to fire exposures at a particular location. And we show that to insurance companies to help them realize maybe that a location that's in a rural area but might not be as wildfire exposed as you think it might be. When we mention wildfire, we all think of liability just because some of the tragedies we have, but we want to also have to address the issue of that you have property that is wildfire exposed. Chris, can you advance the slide, please? So here is a incomplete snapshot as of yesterday of kind of obviously bullet point level features of insurance coverages and what we have so far. So this may be an area where you don't want to save questions, interrupt me as we go. So with SDRMA, you have one package insurance program that has your property, liability, auto, the first $10 million of excess liability, all included in one policy. You can see a bullet point I put there for overhead electrical and wildfire would not be covered beginning July 1, 2020. That package, based on the information that SDRMA provided Greg, estimated about $830,000. That number is probably really close. Then there's another policy providing, with SDRMA, it's $11 million, excess of $10 million, because your PG&E agreements require $21 million of liability coverage. So you already have that premium. And then SDRMA has already given you some information on workers' compensation costs. Next year, you have the experience modification. They've decided to have unchanged rates. So when you put it all together, your 2020 projected cost with SDR may be around $1,622,000. And Greg and I have been reviewing that, and we think we're probably within 1%, kind of rounding error maybe on any individual items. So where we are so far, we've received a few quotes and indications. We don't have numbers yet on the hydro generation machinery breakdown exposures. We do have quotes from one market for the general liability, auto liability, that's the Allied Public Risk Program. In one of my prior slides, I mentioned Allied Public Risk, Glatfelter, and Munich Re. So we haven't heard from the other two yet. So this option can only be included. Can only be improved if one of the other markets comes in or if Allied Public Risk feels some competitive pressure. But the proposal already in hand, again, provides a full, and actually I have 10 million here. That's actually 11 million. But so it would include full $11 million of coverage, overhead electrical, includes wildfire, improves your current coverage for inverse condemnation, failure to supply water. So in terms of coverages, that's a great quote. And again, can only get better. We have separate quotes out to market for 10 million excess of 11 million to get you to a total of 21 million that PG&E requires. We have a workers' compensation proposal in with a water agency program, and it's quite competitive compared to the SDRMA removal, so there's a little bit of a tailwind in the total budget. And we are having underwriter conversations daily. I had a conversation with an underwriter last evening about 5:15, and she promised me a quote before noon today for workers' compensation, and those are going to be coming in. Probably I'll have results every day. So there'll be much more meat on the bones in this outline for the next special APC meeting and for your board meeting on the 27th. Chris, I think that's the last slide. Other than, okay. Thanks. So, questions?
why don't we, open it up to Director Heck and Director Beerwagen, some of your questions. Sounds like you've got some written down.
I do. I'll let Chris go first because I dominated the last one.
Where is Chris?
Where is Chris? We're trying to find him here.
He's there.
I see
Chris,
him.
can you hear us? Can you speak?
If you guys call in. You have lost his connection.
You're already in that tab. You gotta go to panel.
You see him down there.
Well, I'm showing Chris as being muted still.
His video's not
Video's
on.
off.
Try your video.
Oh, okay.
I don't have any volume for him.
Ask him to start video.
Well, maybe I can start my questions while you guys try and hook up Chris. Will that work?
Sounds great. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Okay, great. So thank you very much, Mr. Tyler. That was a really inclusive presentation. I appreciate that. You know, I noticed in a couple of your slides, or you mentioned about a community's or an agency's greatest risk. What do you perceive as NID's greatest risk of all of these, all of the service areas that we cover? What is our greatest risk, do you think?
Well, I think your greatest risks are the overall effectiveness of your employee safety programs and also water distribution risks, I think, are the where you would expect something bad to happen. You know, if you think, who's going to be suing NID for $1 million or more? You know, who is that person and why are they doing it? I see, you know, water distribution related and also maybe in terms of that side. But just in terms of the things that can run away from you, you know, your employee safety programs are the way you guys are operating are really embedded in your operating programs, which is how it should be. You know, it shouldn't be like this separate silo of safety because employees don't think and work that way. You know, they are just doing their job. Those are the areas that I think are the most realistic risk that you would face. There's always the catastrophic unthinkable event, and you kind of have to have your guard up on everything you do every day, but then there are the things that you can expect to happen.
Okay. Another question I have is, and I like this idea that you're going out and getting different coverages and not bundling the whole thing together, because some are heavier with risk and others are lighter in risk. And so we want the benefit, you know, of those less risk activities. And are you looking at, when you start looking at these costs, are you playing with the deductibles? And this may be a naive question at this level, because, you know, I do large commercial real estate, but nothing of this size. So are you able to play with deductibles a little bit to, you know, in those lower risk categories where we can get a higher deductible and manage the premiums that way? Or does that not apply here?
No, it absolutely applies. And, you know, NID has significant risk-bearing capabilities just in terms of your operations. You know, utility is so steady, right? And so if you have a significant liability claim, say something happens, you know, today, and let's say following the trend I mentioned of a water distribution claim, and there's a breakdown and there's a flood or something, and well, so it takes a while for repairs to get made, and then there's, you know, litigation and you have expenses, but it can be several years before a claim gets settled. So, you know, you could have a $250,000 deductible on certain lines of coverage, and that seems like scary. It would be a bad week, you know, if you had a loss and you realize, shoot, we have a $250,000 deductible. But you have the risk-related services that you need. And then there's the commodity of risk transfer, right? Just the idea that the insurance company's balance sheet is going to take the hit instead of yours. And just like fuel or chemicals or any other commodity, you should only use what you need and avoid overbuying. So that's absolutely something that I have my eye on. And some carriers, so Aegis, for instance, we have clients with Aegis that have $2 million deductibles on their liability insurance program and have for 15 years, and it's just kind of not a big deal. Their organization's scale and that risk level make perfect sense. There are some insurance companies that just aren't interested in that high a deductible. They want a $5,000 deductible and look for an organization that isn't having $1 million claims. So that's what makes a market. They all have different appetites, but I think you are absolutely, you didn't say this, you asked the question, but we're absolutely looking at deductibles, and I think NID has risk-bearing capability for a significant deductible if that makes sense, and if, for instance, there's a savings available. So if going from a $25,000 deductible to a $250,000 deductible saved $10,000, well, that's like a 25-year payback period. It may not be a good buy, but we absolutely want to keep our eyes open for that.
Well, that's what I'd like to see when you come out with some of your final quotes, because it costs X at this deductible and Y at this deductible, so we can make some informed choices about the levels of risk and coverage and our final costs. So I know that's a thing.
Okay, Director Heck, I'm going to make a note of that. So thank you.
Okay. And also in your presentation, you talked about that you see that we have opportunities to improve our coverage. And I'm wondering if you could speak a minute about where you see us benefiting from some improvements to our coverage specifically.
So this is a program that's worked for you. So it's not like it's, you're going from, if you go from A- to A+, that's an improvement, right?
Yeah.
But so with SDRMA, there was a shared limit for inverse condemnation losses and lawsuits. And in the one quote we have in already, it would be your own limit with a $10 million limit. So there's an opportunity where coverage in that program would have some, basically some broader and coverage and higher limits. So sometimes that's a matter of definitions also. And to just take you into the weeds, we had a client that had a pollution definition in treated water and some policy language, and there was a choice of two sets of wordings, and one talked about pollutants and contaminants, and the other one used different language, but it referenced the EPA drinking water standards. Well, EPA drinking water standards includes things like foul odor, or cloudiness, and we didn't want foul odor to be considered pollution in terms of the insurance, language. So some of them are things where we really get into the weeds as we start evaluating proposals, and they're hard to spreadsheet, but we're paying a lot of attention to the best possible terms.
Okay. And then this will be my last question for now, and I'll turn it over to Chris. How does this work? If we have a claim, an insurance claim that is in process, and you guys take over on whatever it is, July 1, where do you come in? In other words, does the claim follow you guys, become yours then, or does it still get adjudicated back with SDRMA?
The claim would stay handled by SDRMA, and that's a good thing for you. And here's why. Claims are triggered by the date of the occurrence that caused the accident. So let's just say that today there's some issue in water treatment that happens, but some contamination for whatever reason. I'm making up a claim on the fly, so forget the practicalities of this and let's just keep the kind of the insurance implications of it. But let's just say that some damage isn't observed until July 2nd. Well, you don't want to find yourself in a position of going to new insurance companies and say, oh, and we might have a claim for this thing that happened a while back. Well, and it might be $10 million. Well, you're going to not get any insurance companies even want to look at the submission. So there's certainty on everything that's happened up until midnight, June 30th is covered on the SDRMA program. Now, that's in terms of the coverage. In terms of the advocacy, we hopefully will be your brokers at that time, and we'll do everything possible to assist you if there's trouble for whatever reason in how a claim is going.
So the dates of coverage then would be not so much, for instance, we don't know about something that's out there and it doesn't come to our attention until June or July 15th.
Right.
Is it on a claims made basis or is it from when the incident occurred?
So pollution coverage and employment practices coverage are on a claims made basis. And we would, getting ahead of ourselves, I've raised this subject with Greg. It's just kind of on our to-do. If it turns out, as I'm hoping it does and think it will, that moving from SDRMA is your best course of action, we'll help you with the review of anything that should be reported to SDRMA as a possible claim, and then we'll look at the retroactive dates on new coverage to not have anything falling between a gap.
Okay. Well, I'm done for now. So, Chris, do you want to hit it with your questions?
First off, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I've had a lot of trouble with my internet connection, so I don't have any questions. I think it's a very complex thing. It's a very complex thing for me, insurance in general, and so I think Ricky's asked good questions, and it'll take more learning on my part to even understand what we're doing.
If I may ask a quick question to clarify on Ricky's point, Alan. So when we make the change over, it's expected that as our broker, as of if we choose Gallagher, as our broker as of July 1, you're saying that you would take an advocacy position as it relates to SDRMA as well and support the district in that process as to claims that occurred prior to or claims that are referring back to the policy that was in place prior to June 30th?
Yes, absolutely. And I will congratulate or thank SDRMA, Wendy, and kind of as their lead, customer service person, has been extremely helpful to Greg and to me, gathering information. And different pools have a different personality, and I have a feeling that if Linda Pierce, our claims advocate, or me, or someone else were to call and say, hey, we have this issue with this claim, whether it's responsiveness of the attorney or whether it's they want to settle and you don't want to settle, and having to sort through those kinds of things, we know that they would take the call and they would work with us, and we could, sometimes it's a matter of pointing out policy provisions. Sometimes it's a matter of just helping someone kind of just having an attitude check, And so absolutely we would be involved.
Okay, so you see that as a service as part of the agreement.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So Rim, you're talking about what happens in a transition period with overlaps.
Right. Okay. So we have a few claims that are still running, Chris, and so my question was kind of relating to after we cross the event horizon, the past insurance agent is the pool isn't going to be that empathetic or
Responsive.
sympathetic
Yeah.
to delivering
Yeah,
service, not
right.
receiving revenue anymore. And so, you know, having our broker be our advocate in that space takes a lot of the pressure off of our staff, but also puts the expertise in that space so that we can, for lack of a better word, grind against that stone a little bit better and more efficiently, I think.
Okay.
I will say to Alan's point on that, is that STRMA, Wendy and Ellen, they have been fantastic to work with us through this process. They recognize that we've got kind of in a bind at the end of February on this notification of our electrical systems. And having to jump through some hoops really quick, they've been very, very helpful to us. And I do believe that moving forward, should we get to a point, I mean, I think they're going to be helpful and continue to be helpful.
Yeah, I don't imagine they've been fantastic partners for all these years. I can't imagine that they wouldn't be. And we're still connected to them.
Yeah,
in many ways.
for sure.
Okay. Any other questions, board members? Okay.
Not at this time.
No, not at this time. I'm good. Thank you.
I can't get off without thanking you all for the opportunity. I'm just learning a tremendous amount about the organization. I've got a lot of respect for your management team, and I'm really excited about the chance to work with you and finish off what we've started. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch, Alan. Are there any
Thank you, Alan.
are there any public comments, questions? Press *9 if there are, to raise your hand. We are not seeing any questions from the public at the moment, so we'll bring this back, board members, to a special APC prior to the May 27th board meeting.
Okay.
Future date to be determined.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Greg, do you mind if I jump off the call?
I don't at all.
Okay, but I'd be happy to take any questions that come to mind afterwards.
All right.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Okay, we'll close item number 4. Do we want to take a virtual break? Is that, or no? Keep going?
Virtual break.
Or we can keep going. Board members, what's your preference?
I'm fine to keep going.
All right, keep on.
All right. Open item number 5. Mr. Kean.
All right, good morning. Item number 5 here is to discuss an access easement exchange with Sierra Pacific Land and Timber. We are asking that the committee review and discuss the proposed exchange of access road easements between Sierra Pacific Land and Timber in the district, and then advance a recommendation to the board of directors as appropriate. What this all stems around is the district's access to the Scotts Flat radio tower, formerly known as the K-Love Tower. It's in the Quaker Hill area above Scotts Flat Lake and is part of the district's backbone radio and microwave communication system. For the past several years, we have operated under essentially a handshake agreement with Sierra Pacific for access to that tower up there. During the negotiations with them to secure a permanent easement, they indicated that they wish to get an access easement across a couple of our properties in the Milton Lake and Jackson Meadows area. So we moved forward on a mutual an exchange between the two of us. You can see in the staff report here that we are looking at approximately 1.59 acres of access easement going to the district, and a total of about 1.56 acres of access road easement to going to Sierra Pacific Land and Timber. It's important to note that all of these access roads are across existing access roads, so there's no new roads being contemplated or pioneered. This is all existing roads. This isn't quite the district's standard easement language, since this is negotiated and we're not paying for this easement. It's just going to be an exchange. We did spend some time in the reservation of rights section, making sure that each of us had our reservations protected. We believe that overall that's absolutely worth doing, given the relationship that we have with Sierra Pacific and the ongoing need to work collaboratively with them. So that's the presentation I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have, or we can go from there.
Chris, do you have questions?
I don't.
I do. Yeah, of course I do.
Still bring up good points.
Okay, well, thank you. So, Kian, when we say we're doing these, this access with SPI, what is the access for? For what purpose? Are they going to use these as logging roads, or what are they going to do?
Yes, they want to access some of their property that's adjacent to our property. They don't have an access road there now, so they want to access through our property to access their land in the area. And
okay, would that interfere with any of our recreation activities, the logging trucks, those kinds of?
No. So the access near the campground, the Jackson Meadows, is on the opposite side of the road of our campground up there. So there's really no recreation in that area. And the recreation down by Milton, the road down by Milton, is actually part of Hennis Pass Road down there already. So it's already used as a main road in that area.
Okay, and then each of us has the requirement to maintain our own easement, right? So if their logging trucks tear up the road, they have to fix it?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. I think there was one last quick question I had. Okay, I guess I was just mostly concerned that these new easements would interfere with our recreation. So we'll just take it at, at value that you say it won't. So that's great. So I don't have any problems with this, I don't think. And we don't have to do a CEQA on this, right? Or do we?
No.
No?
We do not.
Exchange of easements.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, me too. I'm fine with it.
Okay, so we would like to carry this to the full board as a consent item, if that's okay with this committee.
Yes.
It's fine with me.
All right.
Okay, are there any public comments on this item? Star 9 to raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close item number 5, and item number 6, Kian again.
All right, so first of all, I'd like to note that I've been joined by our project manager, Nathan Gerbold, for this presentation, so he can answer any of the technical questions if they happen to come up. This purchase was going to be pretty straightforward until last Friday, when on May 1st, the president issued an executive order on securing the United States bulk power system.
Say it again, Kian. Say it again.
Yeah, that kind of broke up.
Oh, all right. Sorry about that. So on May 1st, the President of the United States issued an executive order on securing the United States bulk electric power system, and that's complicated this purchase quite a bit. The President found that foreign adversaries are increasingly creating and exploiting vulnerabilities in the United States bulk electric power system, and that because a successful attack on our bulk electric power system would present significant risks to our economy, human health and safety, and would render the United States less capable of acting in its defense of itself and its allies. The President specifically targeted unrestricted acquisition or use in the United States of bulk power system electric equipment designed, developed, manufactured, or supplied by persons owned, controlled by, or subject to the jurisdiction of direction of foreign adversaries. That's one of the most significant problems with this, is that the definition of foreign adversary is undefined. And in light of those findings, the President hereby declared a national emergency with respect to the threat to the United States bulk electric power system presented by these risks. We have done a tremendous amount of review of this executive order, and as has the entire industry. This caught most of the industry off guard as I've made calls around asking what this means to folks. They haven't fully digested it yet. In general, everyone reads it as an extremely general, very broad description. Everyone notes that foreign adversary is not defined, and in general, the industry is trying to just figure out how to respond to this. Moving forward, staff still believes it's important to move forward today with this purchase. Our plan, as is the plan of the rest of the industry that we've spoken with, is to follow the SIP, the NERC SIP standard for supply chain risk and minimizing supply chain risk. We are following a couple of the recent NERC alerts regarding specific threats to the supply chain. And then we'll include some sort of vendor certification should this purchase be approved. We've also vetted the vendors that we're buying this material from. They're located in the UK, Ireland, Germany, Switzerland, and Canada, as well as the US. We don't believe that any of those countries will be included on a foreign adversary list, so we believe this purchase is safe. It's also standard equipment across our powerhouses that we're asking to purchase today. So to get to the meat of the request here, we're asking that the committee approve the sole source purchase of parts and materials for the Dutch Flat No. 2 Powerhouse balance of plant from DeHurl Systems Incorporated in the amount of $178,573.74. The existing controls at the powerhouse are outdated and create a risk of spilling the forebay over a weir and into the downstream channel of the Bear River. Additionally, if levels of the forebay are brought too low, we risk entrainment of submerged debris. If you see the hydro outage reports in the WHO committee minutes, we often talk about broken shear pins. Essentially, when material becomes entrained, it'll get caught in the wicket gates, and that's when we break a shear pin. This equipment will help to reduce that risk. In addition, we're going to be upgrading the vibration protection. Alan talked a little bit in his presentation about insurance, about vibration protection and its importance in the powerhouses. We'll be able to monitor the vibration out there. Currently, our system is, well, it's one of my favorite pieces of equipment out there because it's an old box, and when it shakes too hard, it trips the unit offline, and you calibrate it by hitting it with a hammer. And so if you hit it hard enough, it will cause the powerhouse to trip offline. That was state of the art when these powerhouses were built, but we've obviously come a long way since then. We'll be able to actually track the vibration. We'll be able to watch it at the different powerhouse loads and really understand a whole lot more about what the unit is doing out there. And so this, in addition to that, we will be able to incorporate other monitoring systems out there. Out at Chicago Park, we're currently underway with a project to upgrade the cooling water system out there. That'll be brought into the balance of plant controller out there. In the future at Dutch Flat, we'll be able to bring this that similar sort of data into the controller there and really track and trend how the machine is behaving and tailor our maintenance programs around it. Staff believes that a sole source purchase in this case is necessary due to the COVID-19 emergency. We've been advised by a number of manufacturers that on top of the normal extended lead times to get some of this equipment, they're seeing at least 4 to 6 week delays in shipping out the equipment that we're looking to buy here. And we just don't expect that to improve. I'm somewhat concerned that we won't get this equipment in time for our outage this year either way. We're recommending the sole source to DHSI because Al has in the past supported these types of projects for us. He was instrumental in the Chicago Park Powerhouse. He was instrumental out of Bowman. We've also gone through and he's provided a detailed list of each piece of equipment and the cost for it. We've spot checked his entire list and found that his costs are at or below the costs we would be able to get this equipment from. He's also included a list of spare parts that would come along. At this time, We've upgraded the systems at a number of our powerhouses, but have not bought the spare parts to go along with them. So we're in a rough spot, especially as we look at COVID-19, and if one of these pieces of equipment would break, it could take us a while to get the replacement parts. So we have included spare parts. We believe that this complies with District Purchasing Policy 3080. This award, in that it is in response to an emergency declaration, and that it by both ourselves and the state. Budget-wise, we're in good shape on this. We have $300,000 budgeted for this project. After the award of this contract and the design, there'll be approximately $78,000 left for the installation of this equipment, and we believe that'll be adequate to take care of it. So with that, just to get back to the recommendation, we are asking that the committee approve the purchase of these parts and materials from Durrell Systems Incorporated in the amount of $178,573.74. And Nathan and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the project.
Yes, I do have a question about this, Ken. This is Chris speaking. I was just curious. I'm totally in favor of this, and I'm surprised. It sounds like hitting the old TV on the side to make it work. But the difference between this and Chicago Park, and does Chicago Park currently have the updated equipment, or is, because this says this was installed time of installation, so that makes it old. I was just curious about that.
Yeah, so last year we upgraded the equipment in Chicago Park with nearly exactly the same system that we're going to put in Dutch Flat. And that is the advantage here, is that the equipment will be standardized across the powerhouses, and we'll be able to work on it easily, and we'll be able to keep the minimum number of spare parts around that we absolutely have to have. But yeah, Chicago Park was done last year.
Okay, very good. That was my question. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. So was this purchase for this equipment on your radar? Like, you know, if you were making a list of the 10 most important equipment purchases for 2020, was this on the list already?
Yes, yeah, this project was budgeted. It was in the approved budget. We knew we were going to do this project. The urgency of this order has been moved up quite a bit due to the COVID-19. We would be able to send this out, get bids, and follow a more traditional bidding process. But at this point, we believe that the month and a half delay caused by the emergency doesn't allow us the time to go out and get those bids together.
Do they have to manufacture these parts, or are they in stock someplace?
So it varies by the piece of equipment. There are dozens and dozens of individual pieces that we're buying here. In general, I don't know. They're
for the most part, what we were seeing from Durrell Systems was stocked, but some of the specialty components, like the actual programmable logic controller, that sort of thing, is made on demand, on order. And so that's some of those critical pieces are why we are seeing the extended delay, because of the issues that COVID-19 is having with manufacturing, and then also the shipping as well.
Got it. Well, I'm totally in favor of it too. I think we got to keep moving forward, and we've got to keep our facilities up to date and safe, and so I'm totally for this.
Yeah, approval.
So.
Okay.
And me too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any hands raised for public?
Thumbs up.
You can't hear me now?
Yeah, now
we
we
hear you now. We got you.
Are you good, Chris? Do you have any other questions?
No.
Okay. Okay, so no questions. We're good. Anybody from the public? Star 9.
None.
Great. Thank you very much. We'll move forward with the purchase.
Thank you all.
Close item number 6 and open the last item on today's agenda, number 7, the safety update. As you can imagine, this safety update covers the time period between when COVID-19 really began until today, or last week. So during this time, the safety department had been quite busy through this COVID process as we opened up the ICS structure, as we had the incident command and command staffing with a safety officer who was broken up between a blue team and a white team. You guys are familiar with that. We had maintenance superintendent Bob McDonald and safety analyst Don Bird as our safety officer during this period. They helped coordinate, assist, and implemented, inclusive of Cindy Ware, our safety tech, a whole range of different safety activities within the district as we moved through March and April through the COVID-19 process, understanding what the state was doing, understanding what the counties was doing. But internally, they were mostly responsible for getting all of our PPE equipment installed and implemented throughout the district. That included spray bottles, that included disinfectants at every station, that included workstation and vehicles, that included working with our internal cleaners to ramp up our disinfecting of all spaces within the district on a nightly basis, not just every other day where there's a cleaning. It was a full disinfectant, and it continues to be until today, or it continues even after today, a full disinfectant nightly. Working with logistics and purchasing on hand sanitizers, getting that out to the district, and a whole range of other activities that they're doing. So while that was going on, we brought in the insurance prospect, and as Alan spoke about this morning, we had a couple conversations with the safety department on the insurance possibilities and implications. Should we be changing insurance providers? Alan mentioned Target Solutions as a main tool that our safety department uses to track, last 12 years, track training and activities of all our staff, all our certifications. So it is a very important tool. We've gone through a number of new hire trainings, some temporaries and some full-times. We've been doing different trainings, traffic control, forklift training, fall protection, heavy equipment. As you can see, all of those were with social distancing in mind and making sure that we had to, sometimes we would normally have more than 10 people in a room. This time we're bringing it down to a small number of people and spreading out those trainings. So we're still operating in that regard. And in general, they're working with maintenance operations, rec department on a consistent basis. You've got a picture of safety technician Cindy Ware on the back, filling disinfectant water bottles for all staff. And I guess that ends the safety report at the moment. Any questions?
This is Chris. No question, but just I was pleased with what, speaking of safety report, what Alan said about safety, and I know that insurance companies are big on this, and just kudos to the staff and to you guys on being affirmed this way. I think it's just a very positive thing that gets very little attention, but is huge with insurance companies. I know that from experience. So keep up the good work. I just think it's a fantastic thing we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with what Chris said. And I do want to ask one thing. The CDC guidelines, I thought, included all of the good things that we're doing, plus taking the temperature of any employee that you know, as they come to work. And I'm not sure if it's people who are not feeling well or if it's just everybody, to identify those folks who might not be, who might be carriers. Are we doing any of that?
We haven't broached into the temperature testing to coming on to work. We've
well, I'm just saying, I think,
yeah.
Did I read that? Rem, is that right? That CDC recommends that in some circumstances?
In some circumstances, that is correct, yes.
Okay, all right, but we're not there yet, or we're not.
Yeah, no,
okay.
I think at this point we've been able to meet the distancing and separation requirements. Everybody has masks. We have our cleaning protocols in place. And we are relying on our staff to identify themselves if they're not feeling well, and if they're not feeling well, we're making the necessary accommodations to have them either work at home or to go home sick. So.
And since our meeting on Friday, where we all entered into this discussion around, you know, the leave, the 80-hour leave thing, or extended leave or leave bank, or has there been any progress made on that? Chris, I don't think you were on that call Friday, but.
So we're still working with the union on that, Director Heck. I asked HR to let me know how many employees have actually come up against that wall, and we have 0 employees that have come up against the 0 leave balance wall.
Really?
So, yeah.
Huh.
Really?
Okay. Huh, that's different than what I've heard, but if that's true, good. That's head scratching. Okay.
Yeah, that was my response when I got the data back from HR. So all of the leave balances are open, and we're still working with all of our staff as they need, as we protect them and the organization and our community as we move forward. So I think it's all, we're doing a good job in that space. And I think that, we have ongoing conversations with the union, and as I mentioned on Friday in our update, that we have put out the negative leave bank, and it'll be up to the union to decide whether or not they want to utilize it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They didn't want to do that. Okay. Okay, then I think that answers my question.
Great. Okay, well, are there any public comment on this? Star 9, raise your hand. Seeing none, thank you very much, directors. Have a wonderful day. We'll close ACC.
Cheers.